Good evening, everybody, and happy first day of early voting. We're so glad you're here. It's really important for people to make time to hear from our candidates for office, and we're delighted to be able to bring you this fourth of the forums that our coalition of co-sponsors has been working on this election season. I'm Ralph Shaw. I'm the spokesperson for the League of Women Voters of Bloomington, Monroe County, and we're very glad that you're here. Like all of the co-sponsors, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose political parties or candidates. We provide voters with the candidates' information through the newspaper, online, with the voter guide, Vote for 11, and with candidate forums like this one that we're having this evening. All candidates for the two offices, the contested circuit court judge race and the Monroe County Sheriff's race, have been invited to participate this evening. I want to share with you the list of our co-sponsors. Well, I do want to do that. Okay. People 30 years ago, they had a category called. So the co-sponsors for our forum have been fantastic in getting things up and running. These include the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, Hoosier Action, the Indiana Coalition for Public Education, Monroe County, Kappa Tau Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the League of Women Voters of Bloomington, Monroe County Now, NAACP Monroe County, and South Central Indiana Citizens Climate Lobby. I also want to make sure sorry for bumping that around. I also want to very much thank CATS for recording this and all of our other forums. They have been fantastically helpful and responsive in getting information up and available to people as soon as it's finished being recorded. At this point, I'd like to introduce our session moderator. Her name is Dr. Gloria Howell. She's president of Kappa Tau Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And they are a forum co-sponsor. She just got drafted to do a whole lot of heavy lifting. Dr. Howell is director of the Neil Marshall Black Culture Center at Indiana University Bloomington and faculty coordinator for first-year experience and introductory research course for freshmen Hudson and Holland scholars. Dr. Howell.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's so good to see you. We're going to start by asking everybody to mute your microphones, please. And Ralph, I might even get you to help me to just mute folks so that we're not having any disruptions while we're doing our forum. So if you could just mute yourselves so that everybody can hear. Thank you all so very much. We're so happy to have you with us. As Ralph said, I'm the president of the Kappa Tau Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And one of the reasons why it was so important for us as an organization to be a co-sponsor for this forum is because we have a social justice and advocacy initiative. And one of my sisters, Mrs. Janetta Nelms, who's on the call tonight, oversees that initiative. And I would argue that she's the hardest working woman in civic engagement in the city of Bloomington, because she is always encouraging people to go out and register to vote and to exercise their right to vote. So I want to thank her for really helping our chapter, mobilizing our chapter to get involved with this. And in addition to that, the Monroe County NAACP is another organization that I serve with as the secretary. And another reason why this is so important to be a part of is because we're modeling for college students, for high school students, for younger students, the younger generation, that their voices are powerful, right? And so I have the pleasure of advising the the Indiana University chapter of the NAACP, who a couple of weeks ago had a voter education week. And during that time, were able to register over 300 people to vote on campus. They were canvassing campus all week. They tabled all week. And so I just like to give their just due. And when I spoke with them last week, they were encouraging students to get to know folks through these forums, get to know candidates. So let's encourage our young people. This is one way that we're able to do that, is by hosting these opportunities for them to get to know the folks who are making decisions, the folks who they can partner and work alongside in making our communities better. So thank you all for being with us this evening. In this forum, it's important to note that all candidates were invited to participate. We want to thank Carl Lamb, Ruben Marte, and Emily Salzman for participating. They will be engaging with us tonight. First, we're going to review the rules so that everybody knows how this works. Each candidate will be asked to give a 1-minute opening statement, followed by a series of questions. We will conclude our round of questioning with each candidate giving a 1-minute closing statement. The order of the questions will rotate, so no candidate always answers first. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer each question. Please monitor the clock visible in gallery view, candidates. When there are 10 seconds remaining, please finish your sentence and conclude. When time is expired, a candidate may be interrupted and asked to conclude. Okay, so those are the rules. I'm going to ask one more time, if you haven't already, to go ahead and mute yourselves, everyone, unless you're speaking. And we know that the only people that will be speaking tonight are the candidates. So if you could make sure that you're on mute, and we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So we will begin with our opening statements, and we're going to do that alphabetically. So we will start with Mr. Carl Lamb.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. And if you've been in Bloomington, Monroe County for the past 30 to 40 years, you probably have heard my name. Hi, and I'm very appreciative to be here tonight. My name's Carl Lamb. I've been a lawyer in this community for the past 38 years. About 44 years ago, I arrived here in Bloomington, Indiana to study at Indiana University after 4 honorable years of serving in the United States Marine Corps. I'm a graduate of Indiana University undergrad in 1981, and I'm a graduate of Indiana University Indy Law School in 1984. While being an attorney in this community, I started my career in the Monroe County Attorney's Office, where I was a deputy county attorney and actually did the final inspection for the Justice Building. Is that I've done civil, criminal, and all juvenile matters. I have 6 children, 8 grandchildren, and I'm asking for your vote in November. Vote Carl Lamb for judge, and I'm going to try to adhere to that timer, by the way. So thank you.
Thank you, Carl. We appreciate that. And we're going to move on to Mr. Marte.
Good evening, everyone. And before I get started, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters. As mentioned, my name is Ruben Marte. I'm running for Monroe County Sheriff. I am a 31-year veteran of the Indiana State Police, currently hold the rank of captain. What that entails is that my responsibility encompasses the entire state. So at this point, what I concentrated on is having training officers and also having an outreach program for the community, trying to build the bridge and develop trust between the police and the community. That's one of the main things that I'm trying to do at the present time. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Emily Salzman.
I'm Emily Salzman, and people should vote for me for a judge because of the unique set of skills that I bring to the position. First, I've sat in as judge pro tempore, and so I know what it's like to be the decision maker as opposed to the advocate, because I've been the decision maker 47 times. Second, there's no such thing as old-fashioned paper files anymore. Judges have to use a specific software to manage their caseload both on and off the bench, and I know how to use that software. Third, I've spoken Spanish since I was 5 years old, so I know how to communicate with a broader swath of the community and population than someone who is not bilingual. Fourth, I know that I have the temperament to manage a courtroom and the high emotions that it comes with, both respectfully and professionally. And fifth, I'm the managing partner at my firm, and so I know how to manage a budget, run a small business, and supervise employees. These are the skills that I would bring to seat 7 of the Monroe County Circuit Court starting on day 1. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for those opening statements. And so now I have a couple of questions for all of the candidates to answer. And as I mentioned, we'll kind of rotate and go in a different order each time. So for this first question, we're going to start with Mr. Lamb. And the question is regarding public safety. What would be your top priorities to enhance public safety in our justice system?
Well, I think that's, I'm on, correct? I think that's a great opening question, because when I came to Bloomington, Monroe County 44 years ago, this was a beautiful place to live. Not to say it's no longer a beautiful place, because it is, but crime has grown by ungodly proportions. One of the biggest things that's affecting our community, and I'm sure everyone here tonight would agree with me, is crime. And the crime is based upon a few problems that we have in our community. And the biggest element of that crime, not only just the criminal element, is mental illness. Mental illness is a big factor that we as a community, we need to partner up, and in particular with Indiana University, that has the mechanisms, the means, the students and others to be able to help us with that. And then right behind mental illness is the problem that we have with basically substance abuse, from alcoholism, meth is a big one, to just even prescription drugs that people are obtaining legally, but using illegally. And finally, as a judge, I would love to be able to work openly with our sheriff's department, who is the front line, and all of our frontline responders, which I totally support and have totally supported them, not only in my professional practice, but as a founder of multiple charities, raising almost $500,000 in the last 12 years here in this community. I basically put my efforts to where my mouth is. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we will pose that question, and I'll repeat the question. What would be your top priorities to enhance public safety in our justice system? And now that will go to Mr. Marte.
One of the platforms that I have is just that. And what I like to concentrate on will be actually bringing transparency, increasing accountability, and reaching out to the community. As I mentioned before, when I go out and I talk to the community, is to try to increase the public trust or enhance the actual relationship that we have between the police and the community, which in turn will help all of us be safer. So the trust between the community and the police has to be there, but it takes time to build. So one of the things that I truly enjoy is when we have open forum where we could talk to the community, explain why the police do what we do in the mannerism that we do it, in a level-headed atmosphere. So when something really goes wrong, we have a game plan, the community and the police together, and it could be understood why is it that we do what we do. But the crucial point will be definitely to get the public's trust in the police. And just in case, which will happen, if something negative happens, we at least have a better understanding on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marte. And then finally, Ms. Salzman, the question for you, what would be your top priorities to enhance public safety in our justice system?
Thank you. I think that the way we tackle public safety in our justice system is really twofold. The first being that we have to have the resources to not do repeating the same thing over and over again, each time expecting different results. We have to add something to that and give people the resources that they need to change things, such as mental illness and substance use disorders. I'm a firm believer in those things because my father is actually a mental health professional. So from a young age, that has been something that was not stigmatized, and that is a resource that we need to give people, and that's not as present in our community or any community really as it should be. And we need to have the board of judges, which the new judge will be one of 9, to help working with those community partners to make sure that those services exist and to refer people to them when it's appropriate. Second, one of the primary topics when it comes to public safety is release decisions by judges, and those take a lot of careful study. But there is a criminal rule that actually dictates release decisions. It's Criminal Rule 26, and that provides a structure to make those decisions. But ultimately, there is discretion left up to the judges, and that's why you really want someone with experience and someone who understands the nature of the criminal justice system making those decisions. I've made many of those decisions during my time as a judge pro tem, and I'd like to continue doing so to bring public safety to this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so now we have another question that all candidates will have the opportunity to answer. We will start with Mr. Marte, and then we will go to Ms. Salzman, and then we will go to Mr. Lamb in that order. Okay, so the question is related to equal justice. How should our county justice system take into account social and racial disparities and mental health status? Mr. Marte, you're muted.
Oh, that would help. That's a good question, but it's kind of complicated to answer in the sense that everyone that we might come across has different needs that will require certain expertise from different other groups, short of the police. It's kind of hard for us to deal with certain things, for example, like social working or someone that has a mental illness, because we're not really equipped for that. So to answer your question, though, it's going to have to take a village to really tackle all the issues that you just mentioned, because it won't be one-stop shop type of deal. It's going to have to be a group effort to provide assistance where assistance is needed, depending on the person that needs their assistance. But it's so complicated because we have to be able to meet people where they are at that given time, because a crisis could come in many different forms and shapes. So we will try to do the best that we can and continue to reach out for help constantly. And hopefully together we could provide some better assistance to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Marte. And I will repeat the question for Ms. Salzman next. Same question. How should our county justice system take into account social and racial disparities and mental health status?
Well, the real consideration to me, and especially those three factors that you mentioned, is that nothing is one size fits all. And especially judges, when they make their decisions, there's an awareness that they have to have of those different dynamics, both racial, mental health, all of the different factors that they could be taking into consideration, whether they're aware of it or not. There is implicit bias both in our society and in ourselves. And I think awareness of really the assumptions that you might be making or the factors that you might be using, even if they're unconscious, trying to be present and really critical of the grounds on which you're making the decision is essential in a judge. I also think that being critical and evaluating our system, and especially in quantitative ways with statistics and looking at if there are trends, it helps us identify things we might not be aware of in deciding individual cases. So I think taking a good look helps us inform whether we're making decisions on reasons that we're not necessarily aware of. And that sensitivity and that knowledge helps us work forward to address issues that might be present as we make those discretionary decisions.
Thank you. And same question will go to Mr. Lamb. How should our county justice system take into account social and racial disparities and mental health status?
All right, thank you very much. First and foremost, we as a society, in particular Monroe County and the people and citizens in this community, need to accept that we have social and racial disparity within every aspect of our society, and it in fact is as bad in the legal system. I think that's the first point. The second point is we have to be able to prepare the individual when the individual comes into our court system because many times nobody's coming in there voluntarily. They're coming in there because it's a criminal case. They're coming in there because it's a juvenile matter. They're coming in there because it's a divorce case, whatever. In my career, I've had over 10,000 clients. I've had the experience to be able to be fair and impartial because my clients cross the total spectrum that I have in the cases that I've dealt with over that time. I think that we cannot, when it comes to mental illness, just simply lock people up. That's not the final solution. It's a temporary resolution. We must find what the ultimate issue is that's impacting these individuals. We need to be able to identify that issue. Once we identify the issue, we need to develop a solid plan of attack. I'm a Marine vet. We use solid plans of attack, and we need to work to a completion as a city, as a county, as members of this community. We all need to step up to the plate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have another question for all three candidates. And this time we'll start with Ms. Salzman, and then we'll go to Mr. Lamb, and we'll close with Mr. Marte. The question is regarding funding and support. What federal and/or state support, if any, do you think is needed to address local law enforcement issues?
I believe that there are definitely grants out there that should be taken advantage of. One of my avenues of addressing this that I feel most strongly about is treatment courts. Treatment courts are shown to be incredibly effective, and because they've been shown to be so effective, there are grants that are specifically out there, and there are grants that fund some of our local treatment courts that I have had many a client go through and made a tremendous change in their life. So I think identifying the grants that can be used also helps alleviate some of the burden tax-wise for our local citizens. So those are funding avenues. There also are community partners out there from a mental health standpoint, from a substance use and abuse standpoint. All of these issues, there's funding out there, but I would be willing to, roll up my sleeves and work with the Board of Judges and community partners to start applying for more grants. We have a tremendous treatment programs here for veterans, for drug treatment court, for reentry court. But they can only take so many people. Broadening that and broadening the subjects that we can address with them, I think that's a tremendous value, and I would support making that as effective as possible here in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Lamb, the question will go to you next. What federal and/or state support, if any, do you think is needed to address local law enforcement issues?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm a strong believer in basically law enforcement. In a society that we live in, it's very important that there are a certain amount of people that just will not follow the laws. And those people that don't follow the laws, it should not subject to people like us that we do. So as far as any federal grants in my many years, I'm not the youngest person that's running for judge. I'm 66 years old, but I would basically be able to recognize any grants, and I would in fact go after the grants because I've created my own nonprofits. I know how to raise money. One thing I would do, and I've never fully understood it, and I see a couple of judges on the screen tonight, so I don't want to basically give them any ideas here against my clients per se, but we have fine system in the court system. Why are we not fining those people that are in the court system that are coming in there, and many of them repeat offenders, is that there's court costs, fines, and fees. The fines is pretty much negligible in the system, which we could. My idea is, why not have the people taxed, if you will, fined legitimately under state statute, or the ones that are using the system the most. And when we talk about the police, those using the system the most, quite honestly, are the criminal defendants in criminal court. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Marte, you will be last with this question. Again, the question is, what federal and/or state support, if any, do you think is needed to address local law enforcement issues?
So at the present time, to support the local law enforcement, one of the things the state police has put together is a culture awareness for law enforcement. which trains the local. Well, first of all, we train ourselves first, but then now we help out and train the local in actual how to deal with people that don't look like you. But simultaneously, we take another program and go out to the community and talk to the community about why is it that police do what they do. And by doing so, we try to mend that bridge and develop the trust that I mentioned before. But on the policeman side, we talk about implicit bias. We talk about racial profiling. We talk about stereotypes. So the officer can understand that when a person of color says to you, I'm very fearful, they understand one of the reasons why people say that to us. But when it comes from a person that knows the police culture and also can relate to and explain what a person of color goes through when they're being stopped or in action with the police, they will understand to a degree what is it that we're trying to say through that particular training. Now, on the community side is very successful as well, because both sides walk away with a better understanding when we talk about certain issues that they face at the hands of the police. So the whole goal is to basically develop this trust and build a bridge between the police and the community.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to some questions for the specific race. So we're going to start with Mr. Marte. It's our candidate that's on for sheriff. So the question that we have for you, Mr. Marte, is what will you do to ensure the sheriff's department is functioning at a high ethical and moral standard and remains transparent to the general public?
One of the things that I truly believe is that to provide training, not only for the deputies, but for the entire department. I think once you know better, you will do better. If you're educated, you will perform better. The officers now do well, but there's always room for improvement. I mentioned before that we have to have transparency, accountability as well. And the other thing is have a robust outreach program to the community. For example, when we talk about Citizens Academy, that's a beautiful program because you have the community and law enforcement together going through a particular training. So you get to know the deputy gets to know the community. And it's a win-win for everyone because the time spent that you spend together is going to be spent in a positive environment. Because normally when the police gets called, it's something negative and things are not actually looked at the way it should be in that environment. However, when we actually spend time together in an environment that is not a negative environment, it works for both sides. So I would be very transparent with the department, provide training for every single person within the department, not only the deputies, and that should upgrade the actual performance for the department itself.
Thank you, Mr. Marte. And now we're going to move to a question for our judge candidates, and we're going to start with Mr. Lamb, and then we'll have Ms. Salzman. So Mr. Lamb, the question that we have for you, what unique qualities would you bring to being?
Well, thank you very much. Unique. When's the last time Monroe County had a 66-year county had a candidate that had 38 years of civil, criminal, and juvenile trial experience? Unique. When is the last time Monroe County had a United States Marine Corps veteran who served this country for 4 years to protect our country? When is the last time a kid that literally came from rags to being okay? I came from Terre Haute, Indiana, where I was a very poor child that was in a domestic, physically abused home with a stepfather. I didn't allow my stepfather to abuse me and basically just absorb that and create that as an issue to be able to grow as a human being. But I looked for opportunities, and the biggest opportunity in my life was the Marine Corps. When I came into the Marine Corps, I found a brotherhood. That brotherhood was a group of fellow Marines, Semper Fi, always faithful, that was there to support our country, to protect our country. And now at the end of my career, almost of 38 years, I want to come back into government work to help people. Please look to my Google reviews. Please look to me in Google and see how many people I've helped in my career being in this county. I've helped thousands of people, and I think I can do it at a much better level by being judge of this community. I think I'm a very unique human being. 6 children and 8 grandchildren, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Ms. Salzman, question for you as well. What unique qualities would you bring to being a judge?
Thank you. Well, I already reviewed several, but I'll hit on 2 primarily. Actually, the reason I'm running for judge, what drove me to run for judge, is the experiences that I had serving as a judge pro tempore. A judge pro tempore is appointed when a sitting judge is unavailable. They hear the cases set for that day and they make decisions and rulings as a judge. And those were the experiences that I've had over 47 times since 2016. Those were the experiences that really illustrated to me that it's a very different skill. The skills that are required to be a decision maker are very different than the skills that are required to be an advocate. And so it really was what drove me to run for judge. Those were the days I looked forward to the most, and those were the days where I felt like I best served my community. And then secondly, the other really distinguishing thing about me is that I'm fluent in Spanish, and some of the most rewarding experiences that I've had in the justice building didn't necessarily come from handling my own cases with my Spanish language, but helping people that I didn't know necessarily navigate that building. Some people come to the wrong place. Some people are in the wrong courtroom. And at that point, most of the time, there's not an interpreter, but allowing those people to feel less isolated and less alienated in an already isolating situation was incredibly rewarding for me. And so being in that building and best serving my community, that's what I'd like to do. And that's what I bring to the position. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go back to Mr. Marte as the candidate for sheriff who's with us. Mr. Marte, the question for you is, how will you work with your officers to ensure that Black and Brown residents will not be targeted or subjected to unnecessary restraint, harassment, or use of force?
I mentioned earlier the 6-hour training program that we provide. I expect that the deputies will receive that training and have a better understanding in the sense of what you just mentioned. And I'll use myself as an example because I provide that training for the past 9 years now to the local agencies, and you know it's a delicate topic, but it has to be discussed. When I stand in front of the other officers, and I could talk about the police culture, but I also could talk about how is it that people of color feel when they're being stopped by the police, and what is it that the police side needs to do to make sure that certain things do not happen when you stop someone of color, because once we provide that training, the outcomes should be better in the sense every time we communicate to each other and we make a stop. So that's crucial for me that our people be fully trained on culture awareness for law enforcement, because once you know, and I say it again, once you know, you'll do better in the sense of how the people of color feel when they interact with the police. And there's always, again, room for improvement.
Thank you. Now to our judge candidates. We'll start with Ms. Salzman, followed by Mr. Lamb. The question is around court procedures. And the question is, in light of Monroe County's criminal justice study, what changes or reforms to this system would you endorse?
Thank you very much. I think the study was very illustrative, and I think we're at the tipping point where people are ready to work together to try and get things done when it comes to criminal justice reform in this county. And I think several different changes were identified, both about the state of things now and that we need to keep evaluating it, but also the fact that all parties need to work together to bring a new jail about. There's a lot of stakeholders in that conversation. The new judge is going to be one of 9 on the Board of Judges. The Board of Judges has to work with the county commissioners, county council, the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office. There is innumerable stakeholders in this situation. And someone who truly understands the criminal justice system is very important. From start to finish law enforcement, to courts, to probation, to all of the other issues that come up. My primary practice is in criminal justice. I started working as a legal secretary before I even went to law school. So the ins and outs of people going in and out of the jail and all of the minutia that comes with it is well within my wheelhouse. But what we really need is people to work together to get a humane, effective, treatment-oriented alternative to our current jail. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lamb, the same question for you. In light of Monroe County's criminal justice study, what changes or reforms to this system would you endorse?
First of all, is over the last 38 years of my practice, I've been involved in civil litigation, as I mentioned earlier, criminal defense, protecting individuals' constitutional rights, and also all aspects of juvenile matters for 38 long years. I am a supporter of the new jail. I think the jail is something that's needed. I read an article recently where it appears that under the current conditions, we cannot house our inmates humanely. That is unacceptable. Is that I support one thing that has been kind of rumored for years, but never brought to fruition. I'm a supporter of the juvenile detention facility. I think it's totally unacceptable that we ship our juveniles that get in trouble and that need to be dealt with at a higher level, which I know those different levels, believe me, after all these years, and we ship them to Vincennes or we ship them to the Johnson County Detention Facility. We need to keep our youth right here in this community and work with them in the efforts of rehabilitation, which is the ultimate goal within the criminal justice system anyway. And one quick thing is that I actually represented all the county commissioners, et cetera, and the council when I was a county attorney, so I acutely know the issues that confront them on a day-to-day basis. But finally, COVID brought us one thing that was positive, and that's virtual proceedings. I am a strong candidate to keep with virtual proceedings, at least at the pretrial level, which would accommodate not only attorneys, judges, and the individuals that have to come into our system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question will be for Mr. Marte, our sheriff candidate. And the question that we have is around staffing and support. What reforms, if any, are needed in the hiring and retention of Sheriff's Department staff?
One of the things that I would like to accomplish would be hiring more minorities, people of color, people that speak Spanish as well, because the Spanish population in Bloomington is growing dramatically. So the recruiting process is going to be robust as much as we can and try to have more diversity in the department. When you are dealing with someone that looks like you, the exchange will be a little, what's the word I'm looking for, will be more of an understanding of the culture, if you will. So with a more diversified department, we could handle and deal with more diversified group of people, in my opinion. So as we go out and talk to people, particularly myself, when I go out and talk to people, I try my best to set an example to attract more minorities to join the police force, in the sense of we need more people of color in this particular career. And that should help as well in the sense of building a trust between the police and the community.
Thank you. And now we're going to go back to our judge candidates that are with us, and we will start with Mr. Lamb for this question. And the question is, what role should individual judges play in addressing the needs of citizens who lack the resources to fight legal battles in court?
I think, again, incredible questions here tonight, very important to our community. I've referred to Dr. Google a few times here tonight, and I welcome individuals to check out Google. Is about 1.5 years ago, I personally attempted to start, which is still in the process, called the Hope Project. I've recognized that there is a definite need in our community to help people that don't have the money, means, or ability to afford the expensive legal services that private attorneys cost. The whole project would be a project that would be funded in large part by GoFundMe's, fundraisers, et cetera, and actually by one of my nonprofits called Drop the Puck on Cancer. Drop the Puck on Cancer for 2023, which is a hockey event of college students here in Indiana University, who I've been working closely with for the last 12 years, will be resurrected and will be raising money for this great cause, where we'll be able to service individuals that are frontline responders, veterans, and individuals of low income that desperately need legal assistance, but we don't have. I think the judges need to be able to recognize in this community, there's a lot of people that just don't have the money, means, or ability to go against some of these really high-priced, high-powered lawyers, and they need to be able to have an opportunity to be on level footing while in the court system. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Salzman, the same question for you. What role should individual judges play in addressing the needs of citizens who lack the resources to fight legal battles in court?
Thank you. There's a few different tools that are available to judges that are tools that they hold in their hands individually. One of them is an indigency determination. And so that happens all the time in criminal cases about whether they receive a public defender. Also, child in need of services cases are eligible to receive a public defender if they're indigent. Making those indigency determinations is something that I've done many times as judge pro tempore, and making those considered decisions, because it's not necessarily how much do you make an hour and that's the end of the conversation. Taking all of the circumstances that someone is facing with their financial situation into account is really important. There's also judges can grant fee waivers to people who are not able to pay substantial fees, for example, to the BMV or in other fee situations. Also, the other really important thing that judges can do, especially in cases where someone is not eligible for a public defender, is to refer people to those services that exist. For example, Indiana Legal Services or District 10 Pro Bono, or even, for example, low bono organizations, which are attorneys that are private, but they do sliding scale fees. And they can do more isolated things for people who can do most of it themselves, but need a lawyer's help on one thing. So those are the tools that individual judges can use to help people who are facing indigency in socioeconomic issues individually in their own court.
Thank you. Back to Mr. Marte, our sheriff candidate that's with us. The question that we have is, what steps would you take to address unfair law enforcement treatment of marginalized communities? For example, the homeless, mentally ill, and drug addicted.
Excuse me, the new jail was mentioned. One of the things that with the new jail that I think a large group of people agree is that we need to have programs that could help people and people in need when they come into the system. So, because right now the jail that we have now doesn't have the space to do that. So with the new jail, we need to have people that provide counseling, people that could help other people try to find jobs, try to reduce people that to return back to the jail because they just don't know what resources out there. So we need to have a mechanism that when they come in, we try to provide assistance where they're at, because everyone is unique. So we need to, because we do have the resources, but we need to be able to reach out to the actual resources to provide to the individual that are in the system. Because if we could do that and help people where they're at and try to support them when they are released as well, that should reduce the number of percentage of people returning back to the system, which is the main goal, and also provide them with the tools for them to succeed once they leave the system.
Thank you. And back to our judge candidates that are with us. We are going to start with Ms. Salzman for this one. Can you speak about any difficulties a judge might face in preventing their own beliefs and convictions from influencing their decisions?
Thank you. And that's something that all judges should really be aware of, primarily. some of our most persuasive beliefs are those that are ingrained within us that we're not aware of, such as implicit bias. And so a judge taking stock of their own beliefs and making sure they're making a considered decision, that's the paramount goal, to take that time and make that fair and reasonable decision after hearing all sides. Judges are human beings, but they're really called upon to be more than that and to have the ability to put their own beliefs aside regardless of what they are and assess the evidence presented. A judge I tremendously respect says, I can't make good decisions if I don't have good evidence. And that is something that they have to take what's in front of them and use all of their knowledge and abilities to make a fair decision based on what's presented in court. Judges are not all-knowing and judges are not inhuman. And so I think both humility and knowing the limitations of yourself as a human being, but also striving to be that superhuman person is really the calling of a judge.
Thank you. Mr. Lamb, the same question for you. Can you speak about any difficulties a judge might face in preventing their own beliefs and convictions from influencing their decisions?
Well, I think that is a very, very complicated situation that can be resolved very easily. And the easy part is just follow the law. Is that if you as a judge, it's not your job to legislate. There's legislators for it. Some judges attempt to do what we call judicial legislating, and that's not the courtroom, and that's not what you do, and that's not what I would do. What I would do is that I've had 38 years of practice. In my law practice, I get all walks of life. I've had people from every part of the world that I've represented. I've had people that I've represented from China, from Vietnam, from all parts of Europe, et cetera, is that I've had people from every walks of life. I've had people that have no money that I provide pro bono, that's free charge legal services for, to people that have money that could blow up the court system every day. But at the end of the day, my commitment, and this is my promise, it's not just my commitment, it's my promise. I will listen to the facts that are presented to me, no matter what my personal beliefs are. They don't play a role in this. The political parties don't play a role. This is a non-political situation. This is a place where we look at the facts, 38 years of experience sorting through those things day in and day out, and we apply the law. Again, 38 years of applying the law. That's how I would work it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're back to Mr. Marte, sheriff candidate. The question that we have is, in what ways should the sheriff's department work with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement?
Well, we're not federal, so we're not going to enforce federal laws. My understanding at the present time, we do not or will not be calling ICE just for the mere fact of calling ICE. However, if there is a warrant for an individual that is signed by a federal judge, that's one thing. But again, we're not federal agents. The oath that I take is to the state of Indiana and to the Constitution of Indiana and to the United States. But again, we're not federal agents to be enforcing federal laws. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back to the judge candidates. We'll start with Mr. Lamb for this one and then go to Ms. Salzman. Question is, what do you see as the most important responsibility of a circuit court judge and why?
I think the most important part of a circuit court judge, other than obviously doing their job, and doing their job means showing up to court timely. Doing the job means they have big dockets. I understand that. I have hundreds of cases myself, is that you have to be able to do your job timely. But I think even more important than that is we have to be able to show the community to be a leader in the community, to be able to have the community respect that person, thus respect that position. We need to have people come into the courtroom and show respect. We need to have people come in and show a courtroom and not be disrespectful to the court staff, to the judges, to others. Is that for me, is I want to return respect to the system. I want to return people having the knowledge, knowing that I have the experience to know the difference between a first-time offender and a career criminal that needs to be kept off the streets and protecting our community. So at the end of the day, I want people in this community to know that they can go to sleep at night knowing that there's a judge on the bench that's looking out for their safety, and a judge on the bench that's going to be seen in the community, throughout the community, because I work with my wife, Angie, on multiple nonprofit fundraisers and efforts through our local church at Westside Christian Community Church. That's what I think needs to be in our system.
Thank you. Ms. Salzman, same question for you. What do you see as the most important responsibility of a circuit court judge, and why?
To me, the most paramount responsibility for any judge, whether circuit court or any other kind, is to have a full, fair airing of the issues where everyone can come to court and say their piece. Yes, respectfully, but that they do feel like they had the opportunity to be heard. And that's a big concern for me, because even otherwise fair decisions, if someone doesn't feel like they had the opportunity to be heard, will not be seen as fair by the people that will have to abide by them. And so you increase faith and trust in the decision's fairness, even if it doesn't go their way, by making sure people felt fully heard by the judge. And it also increases faith and trust in our system if they feel like judges are listening to them. They may not rule in their favor, but they are listening. And that's your job as a judge. You listen to the lawyers in front of you, you listen to the people in front of you, and you make a fair decision application of the law based on what you hear. That's what a judge should do. If a judge just shows up and makes a decision, they're not doing their job, because the judge's job is to hear the facts and apply the law fairly. That's the ultimate goal, that's the ultimate duty, and that's what I would do as circuit judge.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to a question that I have for all three candidates. So we're going to start with our the order that we initially began. So we'll go with Mr. Lamb, followed by Mr. Marte, and then followed by Ms. Salzman. The question is, what additional steps, I'm sorry, misread that, let me go back. Are there gun violence prevention measures that you would not support? And if yes, what are some examples? And we're starting with, I'm gonna ask if we can restart the timer, because I got tangled up in reading that question. So can we stop the timer? And I'm gonna read it one more time. Pardon my mistake in getting tangled up with that. So I'm gonna read the question one more time and we'll restart the timer. The question is, are there gun violence prevention measures that you would not support? If yes, what are some examples?
Well, I'm a little confused by the question. Is gun violence prevention matters? First of all, I'm a strong believer in the Constitution. We have the First Amendment, and as we all know, it's been hotly debated, even more and more most recently with the Second Amendment. I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment. It's not up to me to change the constitutional amendments. Do I believe that somebody has a right to just have a weapon and use it any way they want to? Obviously not. It's the same way under the First Amendment. Does anybody have a right to just scream fire in a crowded movie theater? They don't. So there's limitations. Who determines those limitations? Well, again, we go back to the legislature makes determinations. But I'm not, being even involved as a military vet, I'm not a big automatic weapon guy, even though I've been in prisons meeting with my clients where there's automatic weapons in the hallway, which I can let you know is pretty fearful situation, even knowing they're under control with that. But at the same time is that I do not believe that we remove weapons from individuals, because once we remove weapons from the citizens, then only the criminals are going to have those weapons. And I'm sure Mr. Marte would agree with that, is that being a police officer. But as far as limitations and restrictions, I would support anything that would be in the best interest of safety of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marte, have the same question for you. Are there gun violence prevention measures that you would not support? If yes, what are some examples?
What I support is gun locks, gun safety, a strong background, maybe purchasing a weapon, and something that I don't think we do now, which is provide good gun safety training. In my profession, you know, it's very dangerous when we see a weapon, because we have lost officers that have been shot and killed. So it's a situation that, yes, people have rights. At the same time, we have to be very cautious how we proceed when dealing with this type of question. Now, it's a very delicate question. I understand that. We want to protect people's civil rights. I get that as well. But there are people that have no business owning a weapon, either because they're not being safe, they're not monitoring the weapon, or put it in somewhere where the child can reach it. So it's a complex question in the sense of dealing with firearms. But however, is there more that we could do? Oh, absolutely. I would like to see people to receive better training when dealing with a weapon.
Thank you. And Ms. Salzman, same question for you. Are there gun violence prevention measures that you would not support? And if yes, what are some examples?
This is an interesting question for a judicial candidate when it comes to specific examples. I personally think that everyone should feel safe. I have small children in public schools. I absolutely have a vested interest in, seeing safety in this community. However, when it comes to specific programs or measures, a judge can't indicate how they would rule on specific laws or cases that might come before them. It would be unfair to specify for me, but for everyone, for me to do so for everyone involved. So I support safety for everyone in the community. I support everyone's rights. And past that, I'd make the fairest decision in the situation, applying the law as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was the end of our question list. So we're going to have some closing statements, and we will do those alphabetically. So we will start our closing statements with one of our judge candidates, Mr. Lamb.
Okay, thank you. There we go. I want to thank everybody tonight for the opportunity to be present here. I appreciate the invite. I hope that people have discovered a little bit more about me. The one thing I would say that being a judge is not a political position. It should not be a political position. And you should not look at political affiliation, but you should judge a judge upon the person. Tonight, you've had an opportunity to hear a few things about me. You've heard about me that I'm 66, I'm a parent, I have 6 children, 8 grandchildren. I've done nonprofits in this community. I've been helping the individuals in this community for my entire 44 years in the community. I started in government work at age 17 and a half in the military, and now almost 50 years later, I'm coming back to the citizens of this community, asking this community to elect me as judge, to allow me an opportunity to help assist this community in a different capacity than attorney, but as one that can be fair and impartial and can be a judge that you can be proud of. Vote Carl Lamb in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marte, your closing statement.
Thank you for having me participate in this forum this evening. The questions are very thought out and very to the point. However, if you have not been to my website, please do so, rootingforsheriff.com. I think there it will tell you a whole lot more about me than we have done tonight. But if you're interested, that will provide you a whole lot more information, because I surely could use your vote for November the 8th. However, early voting started today, so you could vote early as well. But again, I encourage you to go to my website to learn a whole lot more about me. And again, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this forum.
Thank you. And Ms. Salzman, your closing statement.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight and answer some, I agree, really great questions. You've heard about all the skills and unique, abilities I bring to the position, but you've also heard me tonight talk about making release decisions, about making indigency determinations. And I spoke about those because I've done them. I've done them by sitting as judge pro tempore. I didn't want to run for judge until I had the experience of actually sitting in that chair, making those decisions. And I think that, in my opinion, is the best barometer. Someone who's experienced, but also knows what it's like to sit in that chair and make those decisions. I hope to continue sitting in that chair and making those decisions for you moving forward. And I would hope you would vote for me in November 8th. Come out to early voting, and you'll probably see me out there. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates for participating in tonight's forum. That concludes our forum. And on behalf of all of the sponsors, we want to thank you all for allowing us to get to know you a bit and your platforms on these community issues that are very, very critical. We want to thank all of our co-sponsors listed there. We want to thank CATS for recording the forum, so this will be available for you to view. I want to especially thank the League of Women Voters. Thank you all for putting this together and for extending the invitation to me to moderate. I really appreciate that. This is my first time doing something like this, so I hope I did okay. But thank you for putting this together and putting such an emphasis on voter education and empowerment, mobilization for our community. Please remember that your vote is your voice. So please, please, please make sure if you are not registered already that you need to register or check your registration by October 11th. Make sure that you make your voter plan. When are you going to vote? How are you going to get there? What resources do you need? Make a voter plan in ample time so that you can have a nice, smooth, and good experience when you go to the polls. Also, plan, I think I mentioned this, but I'll say it again, plan how you will vote. Are you going to vote early? We know that early voting started today. Are you going to do absentee by mail, or are you going to vote in person on election day, which is November 8th? So go ahead and make your voting plan. Know the candidates. Check out Vote 411 to learn candidate positions on important topics in their own words. So I encourage you to continue to be educated on the issues, continue to encourage other folks that you know to go out to the polls. When you go vote, take a friend or 2 or 3 or 4 with you and make sure that your voice is heard, because remember, your vote is your voice. And to that end, we bid you a good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.